Here we see an image of Watson and the Shark, painted by John Copley.
This work is an oil on canvas. It's made in 1778.
And this work was commissioned by Brooke Watson, and this image depicts the rescue of Watson himself, who was being attacked by a shark. And this event actually happened in Havana, Cuba in 1749, when Watson was only 14.
John Copley is an artist of the neoclassical era. He was born in 1738 in Boston, Massachusetts, to two Irish immigrants who had just recently immigrated to America.
Unfortunately, his father passed away while he was still very young, and his mother would eventually remarry a man named Peter Pelham.
And Peter Pelham actually helped Copley to enhance his artistic abilities. And this is shown here in Copley's earliest portrait of his half-brother, Charles Pelham, made when he was only 14 years old. And here we have another one of Copley's earlier works entitled Boy with a Squirrel.
And we see a different half-brother named Henry Pelham, who is playing with a squirrel on a desk.
And this portrait is very influential because it helped Copley to achieve fame when it was exhibited in 1766.
And I can see why. I mean, just look at how well he paints those reflective surfaces, especially on the desk and on his hair as well.
Yes, Copley's use of reflective surfaces is definitely one of his unique features in his work.
That's very true.
Yeah, it definitely added to his fame in this piece.
This image here portrays a man named Benjamin West.
Now, Benjamin West, he wasn't just another ordinary person to Copley.
Yes, yeah, he was a very famous artist of his time who really impacted Copley's artistic style.
Yes, Benjamin West made a rather large influence in Copley's work, especially later in his life.
As a person, Copley was unadventurous. He was described as a very temperamental man in his time.
That's right. Some described him as temperamental, while others described him more as a brooding and self-pitying man.
Yeah, it was because of his self-pity and his dissatisfaction with living in Boston that he would eventually take a very extensive tour of Europe.
During this extensive tour of Europe, Copley was able to experience influential pieces of art firsthand, and he later left Boston and moved to London, where he would reside for the rest of his life.
That's right. This image is a self-portrait of Copley as a young man.
And what a handsome young man Copley is. The next image we have is a portrait of Paul Revere painted by Copley.
And he was really renowned for his well-done portraitures, and he was known also for painting the British royal family and numerous British and American celebrities.
That's right. Paul Revere is just one of the many portraits that he painted of well-known figures in both American and British society.
And you can really see how the reflective surfaces are also present in here as well.
Yes, just like the boy with the squirrel, you can see the reflection of Paul Revere's arm, just like you can see the squirrel reflected in the boy with the squirrel.
It's also important to note that this portrait was just painted a few years prior to the American Revolution.
And Paul Revere's famous involvement in the American Revolution.
It was at this time also that Boston became really turbulent
due to the American Revolution. Now, it's interesting to know that Copley's family was primarily loyalist, and he encountered some trouble with the Patriots,
even though he still personally was neutral.
And this was also a time where there was a great increase in world trade.
Here we see again Watson and the shark, and we see that Watson is in the water being attacked by this really elongated shark.
And this apparently occurred in Havana, Cuba in 1749, when Watson was only about 14 years old. Now, Watson was a friend of Copley's once Copley arrived to London, and so Watson had commissioned Copley to depict this event that had happened to him when he was younger.
The shark itself is not really well painted as compared to the figures, but for someone who had not seen a shark in his lifetime, it is really close as it can get.
Right, it's a pretty good shark considering that Copley had most likely never seen a shark in his life. Now, what happened here is Watson was swimming in the water, and the shark cut off a chunk of his flesh on his right leg below the calf during its first attack, and then he bit off his foot in the second attack.
That must have been really severe. I mean, being attacked twice.
Right, and his leg had to later be amputated below the knee.
This painting is somewhat romanticized. If you look closely at the leg, you can see some of the blood under the waves and the water.
Right, but in general, Copley did a good job in hiding the goriness of the injury underneath the water. So how did Watson get here anyway?
Well, Watson was an orphan, and he eventually became a crew member of his uncle's trading ship, who happened to be in Cuba at this point.
Ah, well that's interesting. Now, Watson was going for a swim in the water one day, and
Presumably, something attacked him, which is that really elongated shark, as you can see by that tail, that seems to blend into the background.
now again, Copley had never seen a shark. However, he had seen illustrations in books, and that's how he's gauging what the shark would look like.
Just notice how the water is really portrayed. It's very much more so realistic and natural, just by the way the actual composition is. The waves are not just some flat lying texture, or I don't know if that makes sense.
It looks like, yeah, the water definitely has some movement, and all the figures, they look very realistic. As we know, Watson had been studying the anatomy of figures, human anatomy, by the time he was 20 years old, right?
Yeah, since a young age, he has really been studying the human body, and it just really shows here by how well you can see how accurate these people are.
Yeah, they're quite accurate.
Also, I want to bring to your attention the composition of the piece and how the figures are arranged.
Yes, they're arranged kind of in a almost a right triangle.
Yeah, and if you were to really include the body as well in the water or Watson, it has such a real strong presence of a diagonal composition.
Right, your eye really goes first of all to Watson, and second of all to this man up here with the flowing hair and the big stick. Yeah. He's looking as if he's about to, attack the shark and save Watson's life.
Yeah, he seems really ready to stab that shark, and you can see that it has a real sense of dramaticism and action, and it's full of intensity.
Right, it has very intense emotionalism here. I mean, every figure on the ship has a different facial expression.
Yeah, it's not like a photo generic, take a picture snap and everyone's smiling kind of scenario, but it's really in the moment.
Right, every facial expression is definitely individualized here. Now I'd like to bring your attention to the sky.
It seems really very picturesque almost, but what's included here that you can see is the use of atmospheric perspective. And it's not quite as detailed as it is in the foreground, but it really Copley really gives us a sense of distance when we're looking at this painting.
Right, and the sky, look, it appears as if it's either sunrise or sunset, presumably sunset. So you have this beautiful sky blue in the background, streaked with some yellow, as if the sun is just going down.
And you can almost feel like a sense of romanticism in here as well, just because of how picturesque the background is.
Right, it's really beautiful and soothing. It's definitely pulls on your emotional strings a little bit.
And notice how highlighted the figures are. It doesn't seem like any normal person would be highlighted this way under the normal sunlight.
Yeah, they're definitely highlighted, and you can tell, they're the focus of the stories. It's not the ships or the sky in the background. It's this boy fighting for his life and this man trying to save him. Yeah,
just look how light his skin is and how white the shirts are of those two men pulling him up from the water, or attempting to.
And look at the clothes. Look how detailed they are.
Yeah, you can still see some sense of tenebrism that still comes back and originates from the Baroque era.
Right, and you can see the kind of flowy nature of the clothes, kind of like the drapery that we see in earlier works, such as Roman and Greek art.